Today's essay is entitled Chinese Takeout. And if you're on the other side of the pond, takeaway is food to go, but takeout also has another meaning that I will lean on a little bit more for today's purposes. Which, if you're in the business of wet work or assassinations, takeout means something else entirely. Earlier this week, the Trump administration announced that they had approved the NVIDIA sale of the more advanced H200 chips to China, which is something that earlier this year, they had said, the Trump administration, that they were not going to do that because it was not in the national interest to help China catch up with one of the few remaining areas where we have a substantial advantage. And that advantage is measured in a short period of time, but it is today the case because of the black belt chips, the most sought after chips produced by NVIDIA. We still have sort of a monopoly on those. But the one step down, the H200s, they're very good chips. They're NVIDIA chips. They're the last generation, as it were. It's important to understand, though, that you can overcome the deficiency in the performance of the chips by adding more chips. I'm oversimplifying because I'm an oversimplified guy who is not an electrical engineer. Just read a lot and talk to people in the security biz. So you can bridge that deficiency by adding more of the H200 chips in order to do the training and the things that you need to get your AI products up to the speed where we are. So the Trump administration essentially raised the white flag of surrender on that issue. It always goes back to what was their motivation. They're not saying anything. The Trump administration, of course, the default answer is there must be some corrupt intent. What that is exactly, we don't know yet, but we'll learn. But for right now, what the Trump administration accomplished was allowed China, once this is all finalized, to bridge that deficiency. Say their Yahweh, my dog, is deeply concerned by windstorms buffeting our 130-year-old schoolhouse where we live. He is not pleased at all, and he's looking to me to provide an explanation for exactly what the fuck is going on with the house moving. So please excuse the background whining. It kind of reminds me of J.D. Vance. Back to the chips. So if you think of Yahweh as the wholly owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party, that's their indigenous leading chip manufacturer, they'll be caught up with NVIDIA essentially in, say, 2 years. So that was last week before this announcement. The Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese military have, of course, over 650,000 intelligence officers working to do whatever President Xi tells them to do. The head count in their, we have 17 different organizations that are the make up our intelligence community, quote unquote. They have, we'll just call it one because it's an autocratic government. We're moving in that direction. We're not quite there yet, and we haven't consolidated all that in one function. But they have the manpower, woman power, person power to accelerate their learning with industrial espionage and other means. But we essentially just handed them a leg up to catch up with us in technology where we had a 2 year head start. And we were maintaining that. Now it appears for corrupt reasons, stupidity, or short sightedness, the Trump administration just decided to give this away. There are some people who are saying with a straight face in the administration that if we don't give them the most advanced chips, then we're incentivizing China to work harder to develop chips on their own. And that would be bad, as if China is not motivated to overtake our country in this most crucial technological area of development. So yeah, there are silly people in the private sector and also in government, and we just have more of them now because think about the human resources function, the talent acquisition process in the Trump administration is based on how red your hat is and whether you suck, you bootlick more effectively than the next guy. That's as Lindsay Halligan and all of those other stories prove. That is the only that is the only qualification necessary for the Trump administration. In any case, so now they're let's just say they're caught up or will be now within a year, and that's thanks to the Trump administration. It also made me think of China more broadly. I mean, they are the most by most measures. They're certainly our most formidable adversary, but you could argue successfully if you worked hard at it that they are the most dominant country in the universe now because they win on a number of fronts that are important. The technology, they just caught up. Energy, they're beating us a little bit now, and within a year, because of the fact they don't have religious heretics and those beholden to the fossil fuel industry holding us back on wind and solar, they will far surpass us in energy in almost no time at all, in the blink of the proverbial eye. Um, they have unlimited capital. They have motivated citizenry. They have, when we have 330, 40 million people, they have 1 point, almost 4 billion. They're military. They have many more individual 1.5 at least men under arms, soldiers under arms compared to the United States, and of course the next battlefield is drones and technology more than boots on the ground. But they will surpass us in those areas. We're ahead of them on warplanes. They have their shipbuilding capacity, both for commercial and military, is something on the order of they can build vessels currently 50 to 1 compared to our current capacity. And that doesn't talk about intent and what the U.S. loses because our leaders are focused on self-aggrandizement and personal enrichment over patriotism. That hurts a fair amount. But they have a tremendous capacity in all of those areas, and it made me think about kind of as we take our Chinese takeout. A trip around the globe. There was an announcement earlier this week too that both Japan and South Korea were in talks with China for trade to an extent that they hadn't been in recent years. Uh, uh, as you know, historically, the relationship between China and Japan is strained because of uh, adventurism in Manchuria in the Second World War. The relationship between Japan and South Korea during the same period of time, some hard feelings. It's easy to say, but what Japan and South Korea have in common is they've lost a reliable partner in peace and in trade in the United States because they can no longer rely on the United States to be committed to a trade relationship, to rule of law, which is what it all comes to. Trade comes down to rule of law, that you know what the rules are, and that if you are treated unfairly in business, then you know that you have recourse that will allow you to seek quantifiable remedies at law. That's the only reason you would go into business with another country is I know that I'll either be treated fairly or if I'm not, that I have recourse, not firing weapons at people, but legal recourse. And that because of the tremendous amount of corruption with the Trump administration, their dealings with the UAE, the KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, um, everything that we've shown our soon-to-be former allies in um, in Seoul and in Tokyo would say to them that in the interest of our population, we need to look at alternatives because the way that the relationship with the U.S. is trending, we can't rely on the U.S. any longer. And that goes for trade and also military cooperation. It's regrettable, but it is inarguable at this point. So that's close to China. We take a trip to the east. We know China has full control of Hong Kong. The financial services industry that fled Hong Kong for the relative safety of Singapore is some companies are coming back to Hong Kong because things have been quiet, and there have been assurances by the Chinese Communist Party that they want financial services to thrive in Hong Kong. But Singapore is a much safer and more reliable government to do business with. So that'll stay. Uh, there'll be some ebb and flow there, but that's very, very important because if it's not New York and London, then that Hong Kong Singapore nexus is all of the financial services in the East, and that matters a lot. As we go further to the east, China continues South China Sea and heading out towards as far as the Philippines. China wants to exert control on the Pacific from the South China Sea and going east as far as they can, project power. They're constructing islands in a way that is contrary to maritime law. But until somebody tells them no, they're going to keep doing it. And the U.S. has shown little appetite for standing on principle on a lot of different levels. I before we leave that, of course, Taiwan is. I would suspect that the Trump administration, although nothing has been, there's been no public pronouncements, but that the Trump administration will bargain away our promises to Taiwan. If China goes full force to what they would consider repatriating Taiwan into more fully into China, there is no way that the United States, under any administration, is going to uh, respond with overpowering military force in order to countermand that attack. Our best option is to arm the Taiwanese and support them the best we can. But that's they haven't been playing the game all that well themselves recently, and but Trump has basically in his mind, I would argue, has ripped up any prior commitment to support our friends and allies. That has a massive impact on chips, Taiwan Semiconductor, and all that. We're trying to onshore that the fabs and do more of that in the United States, but that doesn't happen overnight. No. Um, yeah, we have our friends in Australia. I'm going to grab some water here. We have our friends in Australia, but China is has cordial relationships with Australia. But Australia is up until now one of our most staunch allies in the world. Um, until the Trump administration starts mistreating them as well and screaming about woke, silly bullshit or whatever it is this week. We'll just take a dip below the United States right now because you know South America is very interesting. Obviously, we're consumed with Venezuela right now and what's going on with Pete Hegseth and our troops ziplining onto tankers and threatening platforms and things in the Caribbean. It's regrettable. It's bad for the Venezuelan people. It's very dangerous. It is, and for the MAGA America First crew that voted Donald Trump into office, one of his main promises, uh, uh, besides cost of living, which he's already shattered with the tariffs, was that we're going to focus on America first, take care of our own people. And here he is doing his crazy adventures down in the Caribbean with the Gerald R. Ford and uh, and maybe a desire to control Venezuelan oil. Of course, as we've talked about before, almost I think it's 87 to 90% of the Venezuelan output is contractually obligated to China. And even with sanctions, China just routes it through Malaysia on tankers of various flags and colors and sizes. But that's essentially in world trade, that's China's oil. Are they going to take kindly to the amateurish adventurism going on in the Caribbean if it adversely impacts their ability to get all of the oil that they need and that they've already contracted for? They've contracts in Brazil with Petrobras. In Venezuela, that's PDVSA, and they have done their best to diversify and get oil from a lot of different sources, including Iran. Because of the world being an unpredictable place, they want a consistent flow of oil. And sanctions be damned, they can creatively move things around through Malaysia and get the oil home. I would argue that if you don't hear complaints from China, the information ministry, and whatever proxies, that would be a tell in a poker playing sense that the fix is already in on Taiwan, because I could easily see, because Donald Trump fancies himself as this supreme deal maker. If you're making a deal, you have to have something to offer. And what Donald Trump, he's not going to give up anything out of his own pocket, and hopefully not as much out of the United States Treasury, because he probably has his own designs on that. But he'd gladly bargain away other countries' national interests, assets, or otherwise, to get something that he wants. So I could see him leveraging that quiet agreement with Beijing. If you got to do the Taiwan thing, just try to keep it quiet. Don't not too much bloodshed, and we'll just be we'll say some things. We will protest. We'll go to the UN and complain about it, but we're not going to really get involved. And in exchange for that, you're going to allow us to do our FAFO down here in Venezuela. Might interrupt your oil a little bit, but just get a little bit more from Iran or Brazil, or call or I'll call Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for you, and I'll fix this, and Putin's sending you everything he's got already. So chill and let me do my thing, and I'll let you do yours, because that's the way that corrupt autocratic governments behave. So, and other than that, in South America, Brazil and Venezuela, the oil, the conflict with Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, and Marco Rubio with his tiny little pinga Woody thing going on to prove that Castro's not his daddy, and all roads to Havana go through Caracas, and all of that fun stuff. So that will be an ongoing corruption story. Chinese and Chinese Americans in China, Chinese living in South America in general. Oh, I don't know. That's probably around rounded off. I mean, between Canada, South America, and the United States, it's probably a million up top, a million down below, and a few million in the U.S. Like, whatever. But as far as natural resources and influence in our region, forget about the new Trump Monroe Doctrine that if you read the newly released U.S. Strategy that was, I think it came out last weekend, the National Security Strategy. My belly still hurts because I was laughing so hard. I thought if I was an elementary school teacher, that I would have asked for at least one rewrite by now, because half of the entire document, every sentence starts with "we want." A document with no strategy to the crafting of the document itself, zero humility, and basically it's a child whining about DEI is too prevalent in Europe, and that is will eventually cause the destruction of Europe, because all the brown people are going to come and take your country. And that's 32 odd pages. I read it twice and got just as much delight the second time as I did the first. If you're having trouble getting to sleep, give it a shot. It ain't great. They're usually not all that great. I try to read them every year. But as somebody pointed out on a show I can't remember for attribution, that the last one that was done well was probably in before 1960. So yeah, it ain't always a think piece, but it's there. So leaving South America, and why don't we shoot east from there to Africa? And China really has a stranglehold on resources. In China, they've made the Belt and Road Initiative, trade relationships, security assistance, but not in depth. Russia's down there um, uh, committing war crimes right now because they feel like they're being cut out of the game by China, who is kind of a frenemy, of course, to Vladimir Putin. The Putin relationship back to the U.S., of course, is what degree of control Russian state security and Vladimir Putin have over Donald Trump. We'll know much more about that after both of the leaders are gone. But there is some control. It's just a matter of how much. It's unsettling in any case. But China's control in another, Africa is a basket of valuable natural resources, and also under the Trump administration, as they pull back, they're America first, meaning what it really means is America and countries populated by white people. That is their marching orders, goose step marching orders. So the U.S. pulling back from Africa means that Chinese adventurism, great. Russia reinvigorated somewhere between terrorism and mercenary with the Wagner Group is causing some real mayhem. And then the added layer of whatever the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UAE are doing in Sudan, which is killing a lot of people using proxies. And interestingly, there's been a bit of a rift growing between KSA and UAE And they both were supporting the same mercenary groups in Sudan, a lesser extent Nigeria, but in Sudan. And what will that rift mean between those two countries and their participation in Africa in support of Islamist groups and proxies down there? That'll be interesting. But U.S. has very little interest because that concerns people of color. And Trump he is pretty much checked out on that, except for besieged white Afrikaner South African farmers who he's offering relocation funds and in guaranteed citizenship for in the U.S. So that's just it's on point with his general philosophy, if he has one, which is the white supremacist mentality, but deeply troubling. So and then China and Europe, the only reason that Vladimir Putin can continue at pace fighting Ukraine is because China is supporting with drones and drone technology and other batteries and dual use technologies that allow Russia, who's having a tough time right now, buying up their oil and sending them the tech and kit they need to continue against Ukraine. That's the only way that Putin is keeping his head above water there. Otherwise, much like the description of the change in behavior of Japan and South Korea needing China, our friends in Western Europe will need, as President Macron was just in Beijing recently, and the Germans before that, they need to shore up their relationship with China because they fear a continuation of the America first, which is America pulling back and protecting only its own homegrown interests, which will come at the expense of Europeans, at the expense of NATO. It will be damaging as Trump has been on every, on the economic front, on military readiness, on immigration, on race, on all those issues. That has a direct impact on our friends because we were so interconnected. Perhaps you could argue that, as Trump did successfully and with some justification, that the U.S. was paying too much, paying more than their fair share in NATO. And Trump got the individual countries, the ones that were the Germans were there all along, and the French, but maybe the rest of the NATO countries. Trump scared them into committing to spend a larger share of GDP on their own defense and on NATO. Of course, Trump just needs flattery. So if he says you need to spend more, you make an announcement that you're going to spend more, not 4%. I'm going to spend 5%. Here's a gold trinket. Here is another gift. You are the most handsome and most powerful president in United States history, and wipe my lipstick off of your collar before one of your your masseuse gets jealous. The game that everybody has to play with Trump, but all the energy that is expended in corruption, counter corruption, in shifting commitments on NATO, in JD Vance supporting white nationalists in France, Germany, and wherever else he possibly can. It's a problem. It is it's an existential threat to our national security. But all of the energy spent doing these extraneous little fixes, these were stopgap measures to work around the silliness that's coming out of Washington. All of the efforts that our allies have to make to fill in for commitments that are no longer commitments. Um, don't begrudge the Trump administration for having their own priorities, but to come in and break everything, it has implications on our allies. Not to mention the tens of thousands of people that are currently dying, in what will be more than 100,000 additional deaths because of the USAID cuts. But there are terrible, horrible implications to the uncertainty that Trump brings to the table, the lack of commitment to our allies, and what we are doing, starting with the chips, which is where I began, and ending in aid and every other level of economic interest that you can imagine on trade and energy and otherwise. Every time we take another step back, which we're doing every single day, every additional day and week, and now almost a year, we are in retreat, which we have been. China gets stronger. The entire Trump administration, every policy, including this most recent embarrassing decision to sell those advanced chips to China, every single step is to the detriment of the United States, because we are empowering and emboldening China every single day. So you're China, you're a giant, powerful country full of well-educated, motivated, delightful human beings. But if you are our main competitor, we don't need to be giving China a boost every single week for a year by pulling back, by withdrawing, by surrendering our leadership position in China, in South America, in the Pacific, in Japan, in South Korea, in various parts of Asia, Western Europe, Africa. Let's just make it the entire world. As we withdraw and stare at ourselves in the mirror and focus on making our Trump's children more wealthy, which is the primary motivation of the United States government now, all the energy spent with Don Jr., Eric Trump, the Witkoff children, Jared Kushner, excuse me. It is all that energy that could be spent making America at least good again, if not great. That energy And those resources are diverted to the U.S. withdrawing from a leadership position, which invites, almost demands that China fill the void because they're the only Vladimir Putin, whatever he's got going on with or over Trump. That is what it is, and again, we'll learn more as we go along. But what is indisputable is China, if it was a parity situation only recently, they have now taken a step forward and up in their competition with the United States. And that is thanks, in large part, because of the irresponsible management of the Trump administration. So that is Chinese takeout for today. I love the Chinese people. I love Hong Kong. I love, as some of my connections here know, I also love the beautiful horses that run around in Hong Kong a couple days a week, which I'm going to have something within the feed on a separate feed coming up in the next week, writing a little bit more about that, because that's my hobby. Only about 50 years, 40 odd years worth. Yeah. So Chinese takeout and every advantage that we can possibly give to the Chinese to invite them to reinforce their leadership position in the world. The Trump administration is doing it for them each and every day. So keep an eye on Venezuela, China, on Japan, South Korea, China, the continued expansion of influence in Africa, and thank your elected officials, as I stated this morning, that the military can't protect us from the people that we vote into office. We just have to be a little bit more thoughtful at the ballot box, at the polling places, and let's keep grinding. And wishing you all a beautiful day. Kindly restack and do all those fun things, and we'll be back with you sometime tomorrow. Thanks very much, and have a great day today.